Imagine a scenario where a South Korean president from the progressive political camp, known for its pro-reconciliation stance toward the North and cautious approach toward Japan, makes his very first foreign trip to Tokyo. What if he then declares that the decades-old security with the U.S., economy with China strategy is no longer viable? We're not talking about a hypothetical. We're talking about the real-world shift happening right now under President Lee Jae-myung. This is a story of a major strategic reversal that challenges everything we thought we knew about Korean politics. But what exactly led to this dramatic change, and what does it mean for the future of Asia? A tale of two ideologies and global concerns. To understand the magnitude of this pivot, we must first look at the deeply rooted political divide that has shaped modern South Korea. The story begins with the Korean War, a brutal conflict from 1950 to 1953 that solidified the division of the peninsula. South Korea, under the powerful influence and support of the United States, adopted a path of capitalism and democracy. Following the war, the country was governed for a long period by military dictatorships. While these governments were authoritarian, they also presided over an era of incredible economic growth, transforming a war-torn nation into an industrial powerhouse. This period, however, was also marked by a brutal suppression of dissent. In the 1980s, a powerful pro-democracy movement rose up, fueled by a young generation of activists, students, and workers. These activists, who had opposed the military dictatorships, went on to form the core of what we now call the progressive camp. They often felt a deep-seated distrust of the U.S. for its perceived support of the military regimes, and had a more sympathetic view toward North Korea. On the other hand, the architects of South Korea's economic boom and their supporters naturally gravitated toward the conservative camp. They championed a strong alliance with the U.S. and saw anti-communism as a fundamental tenet of national security. These two historical narratives gave birth to two distinct foreign policy philosophies. The progressive camp, exemplified by the Moon Jae-in administration, has historically prioritized inter-Korean peace above all else. Their approach was one of balanced diplomacy, aiming to maintain a cooperative relationship with China, while upholding the alliance with the U.S., and keeping a wary distance from Japan due to unresolved historical issues. In contrast, the conservative camp, including leaders like former President Yoon Suk-yeol, has traditionally championed a strong trilateral alliance with the U.S. and Japan as the bedrock of their foreign policy. This approach is often framed around shared liberal democratic values, a hardline stance toward North Korea, and a more confrontational posture toward a rising China. Given this historical divide, there was significant anxiety in Washington and Tokyo when a progressive leader like Lee Jae-myung came to power. Many in the U.S. feared a potential return to a pro-China stance, which could undermine the trilateral security framework in the Indo-Pacific. This led to a period of cautious diplomacy and an effort to ensure South Korea's continued alignment. Similarly, Japan worried that a new progressive government would reignite anti-Japan sentiment and reverse the recent diplomatic progress. These concerns were very real, leading to a tense atmosphere right up until his first major foreign policy moves. The new reality: pragmatism over ideology. This long-standing ideological tug-of-war has been broken by President Lee Jae-myung's new administration. Lee, a progressive leader, is charting a new course that is startlingly different from his predecessors, a course based not on ideology but on pure pragmatism. The most powerful signal of this new approach was his decision to make Japan his first official overseas visit after taking office, an unprecedented move for a progressive president. For decades, the first trip for a newly inaugurated South Korean leader has almost always been to Washington. By going to Tokyo first, he defied expectations and sent a clear message that mending the historically strained relationship with Japan is a top priority. His Japanese counterparts, who had feared a return to a chilly diplomatic environment, were reportedly surprised and relieved by this gesture. This was quickly followed by a successful U.S.-Korea summit, which, despite pre-summit anxieties in Washington, was concluded on a positive note, affirming the strength of the alliance while acknowledging the new geopolitical realities. Finally, President Lee made an even more significant strategic announcement: the explicit rejection of the decades-old principle of security with the U.S., economy with China. This statement is a recognition that the world has changed. As the U.S. and China engage in a fierce strategic competition, economic and security interests are no longer separate. China has shown a willingness to use its economic power for political leverage, making a strategy based on dependence a major risk. This new approach signals a shift toward a more diversified supply chain strategy and a rejection of reliance on any single trading partner. The driving forces and core logic. So why the change? Why would a progressive leader abandon the very principles that have defined his political identity? The answer lies in a simple but powerful logic: national interest. The old strategy of security with the U.S., economy with China has been rendered obsolete by global geopolitical shifts. The intensifying U.S.-China strategic competition and the subsequent global supply chain realignments mean that security and economic interests are now inextricably linked. The world is being forced to choose sides, and a nation like South Korea, which is heavily reliant on international trade, can no longer afford to straddle the fence. This new policy is not a move from one ideology to another. It is a pivot toward pure pragmatism. The central tenet is that all foreign policy decisions must be based on a clear, cold-eyed assessment of what is best for the nation. This approach can be seen as a third way that transcends the traditional progressive-conservative dichotomy. It aims to enhance cooperation with key allies like the U.S. and Japan, while still acknowledging China's economic importance, but without allowing economic reliance to compromise national security. The road ahead: challenges and prospects. Of course, this bold new approach is not without its challenges. Domestically, it may face criticism from more traditional wings of the Progressive Party who could view it as a betrayal of core tenets. There will also be the perennial challenge of navigating the great powers. How can South Korea maintain a truly balanced approach between the U.S. and China without appearing to favor one over the other or losing trust from both? However, if successful, this strategy could propel South Korea to become a more agile and influential player on the global stage. By prioritizing national interest over ideological camps, South Korea has the potential to become a true strategic middle power, capable of shaping its own destiny in a complex and unpredictable world. In a world where old alliances are being tested and new divisions are emerging, South Korea is charting a course based not on what's familiar, but on what's practical. The question is, can this new approach secure its future?